Some modern scholars have quietly begun the process of applying modern textual criticism to the Quran. In his new book, Dr. Stephen Shoemaker documents the growing challenge to the Noldeki-Schwallian paradigm. Well, greeting everyone. This is Fadi, and I want to thank you, of course, as always, for watching this video series and any of our videos and our channel. And thank you for subscribing to CIRA International. I also encourage you to subscribe to our dear brother, Dr. J. Smith channel, pfanderfilms. And remember also to consider becoming part of our Patreon team. Your support is needed as always, and we are always blessed by it, regardless of the amount, obviously. So thank you so much again for partnering with us. We have been unpacking contents that come from a newly released book. In fact, I believe it was released in August 2022, titled Creating the Quran by an author. His name is Stephen Shoemaker. And we've been really taking quotations from that book, discussing many of the arguments that are raised in that book. And one of those arguments that were brought up in the book is known as Noldeki-Schwallian paradigm. And we did address this in a couple of episodes in the past. Now we are going to discuss criticism of this paradigm. And the paradigm in a nutshell stated that we have to accept what we call the Uthmanic Quran as the Quran, as the standard original Quran. In other words, accept it as a fact and move on. And now we're going to talk about criticism of that position. With me here, of course, to discuss all of this is Dr. J. Smith. Dr. J, thank you as always. And of course, we did address this Noldeki-Schwallian paradigm, but now we're going to talk about criticism of that position.
Yeah, it has been taken as the norm, this is the narrative that everybody uses. You grew up with it, I grew up with it, it's all over academia. It has really been birthed with Noldeki and Schwalli from the last century and the century before. So there haven't been too many people who have found fault with it because they've never looked at it, nor did they want to find fault at it, even if they knew that there was faults in it. What I want to do is look at 6 scholars specifically and just see their criticism and unpack each one of their criticisms. Mm-hmm. The first one, and these are all in Shoemaker's book. He brings them up, and so it's not me that has found this. This is why I like Shoemaker. He goes to all the academic scholarship that he is aware of and pulls it from many different sources so it speaks for him, so that it's not just one voice. That's always good to do that, so you know that you're not speaking alone, you're on an island, or that you are unique. There are an awful lot of people who are saying this. We just haven't read them, nor did we see why is it they've come to their conclusion.
And these scholars, I mean, for the most part, they were ahead of their time, or they faced a lot of rebuke for daring to say anything that goes against the standard tradition.
No, especially someone like Patricia Corona, who is a second one. Let's start with John Burton, and I'll do it in sequence of when they wrote or when they referred to their critique of Noldeki-Schwallian paradigm. John Burton says this: the reports are a mass of confusion. These are the traditional reports, right. The standard Islamic narrative, are a mass of confusions, contradictions, and inconsistencies. By their nature, they represent the product of a lengthy process of evolution, accretion, and improvement. They were framed in response to a wide variety of progressing needs. The existence of such reports make it clear that the Muslims were confused. And he's specifically talking about the Uthmanic recension, the Uthmanic manuscript. The earliest stage of the traditions on the collection of the Qur'an did not consist in incompatible attributions of the first collection to Abu Bakr, to Umar, and to Uthman. So you can see this enormous amount of confusion is there. Why hasn't anybody noticed this? That suggests that there's a problem with this because no one really knew what it was. These are nothing but second guess. I mean, Al-Tabari is probably typical of this. Al-Tabari, we know, in fact, we love Al-Tabari, who's writing in the 10th century. He died in 923, and he would take every tradition he could find. He would amass it together, and then he would just kind of throw it out there, right. And he'd say, now you, the reader, you decide which one you like.
Here's a possibility, here's a possibility, here's another account, and he goes through the list, of these accounts. Ibn Kathir did the same thing also, by the way, many times.
So this is why we love him, because they are just so transparent. Patricia Corona is one who is by far the leading scholar on this point. In 1992, She writes this. Scholars mimic Muslims. She says, Western Islamicists frequently sound like Muslims, she says, usually of the Sunni variety, not only in the sense that they accept Sunni information, but also in that they revere it in a manner incompatible with the question mark to which they have in principle committed themselves. What did they commit themselves to? The whole historical critique method. That's what you're supposed to hold yourself to if you are a historian and if you're a scholar in the history of Islam. This is a compliment to the strength of Sunnism, but it does not do the modern study of its origins and development any good. So, they're so endeared to the Muslims. Well, that's the reason why, is because of our good friend Smith has demanded they do so, that they're not even following their own craft. They're not even implementing their own criteria, and they're certainly not doing a historical critical study is what they're supposed to do if they are really scholars of the historical critical method. So she says that in 1992. Now, Chase Robinson in 2005, now we're coming into this century, and he says this: the complicated and protracted processes that generated monotheist scriptures in antiquity and late antiquity are generally measured in centuries or at least several decades. The tradition would have us believe, that's the Islamic tradition, that in the case of Islam, they were telescoped into about 20 years. Are we really to think that within a single generation, God's word moved from individual lines and chapters scribbled on camel shoulder blades and rocks to a complete, single, fixed, and authoritative text on papyrus or vellum? It would be virtually unprecedented. It is furthermore unlikely in the light of what we now know of early Arabic. That's coming later. The nature of early Arabic script, which only imperfectly described vowels and consonants, and conventions of memorization and reading, which often privileged memory over written text, would mitigate against the very rapid production of the fixed and authoritative text that the tradition described. Now, what he's saying very simply is just look at the Quran. Just read it, for heaven's sakes. It's sophisticated. It has an enormous amount of categories. It has an enormous amount of laws, rules, regulations, all kinds of legal process. It is really quite a sophisticated piece of literature. And yet you're trying to say something that of this nature would take centuries to put together. You're saying happened in only 22 years.
And these guys are asking the right questions. Indeed, how can you convince me that such a book was preserved in such a speed and was put together perfectly in such a short period of time, and yet what we have as evidence back then and today contradict all of this claim?
Absolutely. Now, we're going to continue with three more in the next episode, because these three I just want to get started with, because now that brings us into the next century, this century that we're living in. What I want to do now is do more with 2006, 2012, and then even this year, what Shoemaker is saying.
And what is it that we want people to get out of these, different criticism by these scholars? I mean, what exactly are we trying to help them get out of it? I mean, that's for the benefit of the
for the Muslims who are listening. Yeah. What you need to know is we have been for so long taking what you're saying verbatim. We've never questioned it. We never really even unpacked it. We never even tried to critique it. Well, this has got to stop, is what they're saying. And this is what Shoemaker is saying. This is what Crone has been saying. This is what Burton has been saying earlier. We now are going to apply the same context, the same categories that we did to the Bible, we're going to now apply to you. And we're going to do some historical criticism, but we're also going to look at in the context of the historical environment that it was supposedly written. We're going to look at it within the 7th century. What we're going to find, and you're going to see this, is that it just does not fit that century, it does not fit that time, and it does not fit what the early scholars were saying. Even the early scholars who were written in the 9th and 10th century don't agree with what we're saying today. So that's why it's important that we do this, we ask these questions, and then we come to conclusions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And of course, I hope everyone has been paying attention to the many arguments that we've been raising. We are quoting from the book, we are addressing content from the book, but we also will giving you the flavor of even wrestling with what's being mentioned or dissecting the meaning behind it or the interpretation that could be drawn out of the many basically fascinating quotations, fascinating arguments, contradictions that are being highlighted or put in a spotlight, and so on and so forth. And as my brother mentioned here, The intent here is to help you, our viewers, especially our Muslim viewers, take a look and a glimpse at many scholars, by the way, like Patricia Crone, for instance, said things that I doubt they're being quoted all the time, at least during her lifetime, or even up until recently. Why? Because there is this fear factor. Sometimes people are being attacked and antagonized for daring to go against the mainstream, basically, tradition of accepting, as, some of the scholars stated, the Uthmanic recension. In other words, accept it, move on, and just don't argue back, and just do not highlight anything that is negative or perceived to be negative against the Quran and its history. But that flies in the face of scholarship. That flies in the face of authenticity of research, credibility of research, truthfulness of research, because a scholar, in my humble view, is like an investigator. Looks at evidence, shares the evidence. They can withhold their opinion, but at least make these evidence known to those who need to benefit from it. In this case, I speak to you, my Muslim friends. It is not for my own gain that I'm doing this. We receive a lot of flack, myself and Dr. J, by the way, for doing things like this. You have no idea how many times we're being cussed out or ridiculed. Just go and read the many comments that we receive on our YouTube channel. But it doesn't matter to me. At the end of the day, what matters the most is that I want you to know the truth and be set free. And only Christ can set you free. Until we meet next time, have a blessed day. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.